Go find yourself another table. This one is for family, not for foster girls.
My sister Amanda's voice cut through the elegant dining room of Harrington's, one of the most exclusive restaurants in San Francisco. Laughter erupted around the table, my parents, my brother Brian, and Amanda's husband all joining in as if it were the funniest joke they had ever heard. I stood there holding my clutch, my face burning with humiliation as other guests turned to look. The chandeliers sparkled above, casting warm light over the white tablecloths and crystal glasses, but I felt a chill inside. My name is Emily, and I'm 27 years old. But before I continue my story, please make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing how far my stories travel. I've lived with this family for 22 years, ever since they adopted me when I was 5. 22 years of being reminded that I didn't belong, that I was different, that I was less than them. The only person who ever made me feel like I mattered was my grandmother, Eleanor Hayes, my adoptive mother's mother, who sat at the far end of the table with a strange expression on her face. "Amanda, that's enough," I said quietly, trying to keep my dignity. "Oh, don't be so sensitive," my mother, Linda, interrupted, waving her manicured hand dismissively. "We're just teasing. You know how Amanda is." I knew exactly how Amanda was. At 32, she had perfected the art of making me feel small while pretending to keep the family peace. Growing up, she got the biggest bedroom, the newest clothes, the private college education. I got hand-me-downs and a spot at a junior college. She was praised for mediocrity. I was criticized for excellence. "Sit down, Emily," my father, Robert, ordered. "You're making a scene." I swallowed the protest rising in my throat and sat down. This dinner was supposed to celebrate Amanda's latest business deal, some real estate investment my parents had helped finance. They were always helping Amanda. 3 years ago, when I asked for a small loan to start my graphic design business, they laughed and told me to be realistic. The evening dragged on, the conversation flowing around me as if I didn't exist. Amanda bragged about her new Tesla. Brian talked about his promotion at the bank. My parents beamed with pride, asking questions, offering congratulations. When I tried to mention the major client I had just landed, a contract worth $50,000, my mother cut me off. "That's nice, dear. Brian, tell us more about your bonus." By the time dessert arrived, I had retreated inside myself, the familiar numbness settling in. That was my place in the family, the outsider, the charity case, the one they kept around to feel better about themselves. Then the waiter approached with the check. My stomach dropped when he placed the leather folder right in front of me. I stared at it, confused. "What's this?" I asked. Amanda's laugh was sharp and bright. "Oh, didn't we mention? You're paying tonight. Think of it as your contribution to the family, since you're always taking and never giving." "Taking?" The word came out strangled. "I've never asked you for anything. The roof over your head, the food, the clothes." Linda ticked them off on her fingers. "We gave you everything, Emily. The least you can do is buy us dinner." My hands trembled as I opened the folder. The total made my vision blur, $3,270. They had ordered the most expensive wines, several appetizers, premium steaks, lobster tails. Brian had ordered 3 desserts just because he could. "I can't afford this," I whispered. "Of course you can," Amanda said sweetly. "You just told us about your big client. 50,000, wasn't it? This is nothing for you now." The truth was that the 50,000 would be spread over 6 months of work, most of it already allocated to business expenses, rent, and student loan payments, debts my family had refused to help with. This single dinner would wipe out my savings. But I couldn't make another scene, couldn't give them more ammunition to call me ungrateful or dramatic. With shaking hands, I pulled out my credit card and placed it in the folder. The waiter took it away, and I forced myself to smile, sip my water, and pretend this wasn't breaking me inside. Amanda was already talking about their upcoming vacation to Piedmont, and my parents were planning to join her. No one asked if I wanted to come. They never did. When the waiter returned with my card and the receipt, I signed with numb fingers, $3,270 for the privilege of being humiliated by people who were supposed to love me. Well, that was lovely, Linda said, dabbing her lips with a napkin. Same time next month? Next month. They expected this to become a regular thing. I opened my mouth to finally say enough was enough when a firm voice cut through the chatter. Just a moment, please. Everyone fell silent. Eleanor, who had been quiet all evening, was standing at her end of the table. At 78, she still commanded attention, her silver hair perfectly styled, her posture straight and proud. Something in her expression made my chest tighten. The restaurant itself seemed to hold its breath. Eleanor had always been different from the rest of the family. While my parents and siblings treated me like an obligation, she had been the one who showed up at my school plays, who remembered my birthday, who asked about my dreams. She was also the wealthiest person I had ever known, a self-made billionaire who had built a biotech empire from nothing. Lately, though, she had been quieter, more observant. I had noticed her watching family gatherings with an intensity that made me wonder what she was thinking. "Mother, what is it?" Linda asked, irritation creeping into her voice. We were just about to leave. "Sit down, all of you," Eleanor said, her voice carrying an authority that made even my father straighten in his chair. "I have something to say, and you're going to listen." Amanda rolled her eyes but stayed seated. Brian checked his phone under the table. My parents exchanged uneasy glances. Eleanor's gaze swept across all of them before resting on me. There was something in her eyes, sadness, maybe disappointment. "I've been watching this family for years," she began, her tone steady but cold. "Watching how you treat Emily, how you've always treated her." "Mother, really?" Linda protested. "This isn't the time. Be quiet." The command was sharp enough that even my mother obeyed. "I'm 78 years old, and I've spent the past few months thinking about my legacy, about where my money should go when I'm gone." The table went silent. My father set down his fork with a nervous clink. Amanda's smug expression faltered. "We all know how this works," Eleanor continued. "The bulk of my estate goes to Linda, then gets divided among the grandchildren. That's what the current will says." I saw Amanda's face light up with greed. She had been counting on that inheritance for years, making investments and grand plans based on money she didn't even have yet. "But I've had my lawyer draw up a new will." Eleanor reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "Signed and witnessed yesterday, with a self-proving affidavit notarized." The silence was suffocating. "You can't be serious," Brian said. "You're changing your will?" "Because of what? A stupid joke." "A joke?" Eleanor's laugh was bitter. "I've watched you all mock and belittle Emily for more than 2 decades. I've seen you exclude her, humiliate her, treat her as if she's less than human. And tonight, you made her pay for your excess while you laughed about it." "We were just having fun," Amanda said, but her voice trembled. "Fun?" Eleanor repeated the word as if it tasted bitter. "You think cruelty is fun? You think making someone feel worthless is entertainment?" My heart pounded so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Eleanor walked slowly around the table until she stopped beside me. She placed her hand gently on my shoulder. "Emily is the only one in this family who has shown true character," she said. "She's worked for everything she has, built a business from nothing with no help from any of you. She's kind, talented, and resilient despite your best efforts to break her spirit." "Mother, you're being dramatic," Robert said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" Eleanor's eyebrows lifted. "Linda, when was the last time you actually asked Emily about her life, really asked and listened to her answer?" My mother's mouth opened and closed. Brian, Eleanor turned to my brother. Have you ever congratulated your sister on her achievements? Have you ever once acknowledged her success? Brian stared down at his plate. And you, Amanda, Eleanor continued, have you spent even a single day treating Emily like family instead of a servant? My sister's face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. Eleanor looked at each of them in turn, disappointment plain in her eyes. You've all failed spectacularly. You took in a little girl who had lost everything, and instead of showing her love and support, you spent 22 years making her pay for kindness you never truly gave. Her words hung heavy in the air. Other diners had stopped pretending not to listen. Waiters stood nearby, hesitant to interrupt the unfolding drama. So here's what's going to happen, Eleanor said, her voice gaining power. My entire estate, every dollar, every property, every investment, is going to Emily. The reaction was instant. What? Amanda shrieked, jumping to her feet. You can't do that. That's not fair. Brian slammed his hand on the table. Mother, think about what you're saying. Please, Mother, Linda pleaded. You're talking about billions of dollars. Emily isn't even real family. Stop. Eleanor's command cut through the chaos like a blade. Emily is more family than any of you have ever been. She's earned this not through blood, but through character, by being a better person than all of you combined. I sat frozen, unable to process what was happening. Billions of dollars. Eleanor's entire fortune. It was impossible to comprehend. You're being manipulated, Robert said desperately. Emily hasn't done anything but survive your cruelty, Eleanor cut him off sharply. And that ends tonight. She pulled out her phone. James, it's Eleanor. Have the new will executed and lodged with your office immediately. Update and fund the trust documents for Emily. My family's faces shifted from shock to fury to disbelief. Amanda looked as if she might faint. Brian's face had turned a dark shade of red. My parents seemed to age 10 years in a matter of seconds. This isn't over, Amanda hissed at me. We'll contest it. We'll fight you in court. Try it, Eleanor said calmly. Everything is completely legal, and I am of sound mind, confirmed by a medical evaluation this morning. She had planned every single detail. The explosion that followed was like nothing I had ever seen. Amanda lunged across the table, her face twisted with rage. Brian caught her arm, but his own anger simmered beneath the surface. My parents sat in stunned silence as their world began to crumble. You manipulative little, Amanda spat at me. You planned this. You've been playing the victim all along. Enough, Eleanor snapped, stepping between us. Emily has done nothing wrong. She didn't even know about this until now. It was true. I sat there still in shock, my mind spinning. Billions of dollars. Eleanor's entire estate. Everything she had built over her lifetime. Why are you doing this? Linda's voice broke, tears streaming down her face. I'm your daughter, your blood. And you should be ashamed of how you've acted, Eleanor replied, her tone softer but still firm. I gave you every advantage in life, education, opportunities, love, and you learned nothing about compassion or kindness. Instead, you passed your cruelty on to your own children. Let's be reasonable, Robert tried, his voice trembling. We can work this out. Maybe split the estate. There's nothing to work out, Eleanor interrupted. The decision is made. My lawyers have everything in order. The trust is established. Emily will receive everything upon my passing, with immediate access to certain accounts under the trust starting tomorrow. Tomorrow? The word hung in the air. This wasn't some distant promise. It was real, immediate, happening now. Brian leaned forward, his tone dark and threatening. You're making a huge mistake. Emily doesn't know how to handle that kind of money. She'll waste it within a year. Emily built a successful business from nothing, Eleanor interrupted. At 27, she's more financially responsible than any of you have ever been. She had to be, you never helped her. My voice finally found its way out, shaky and uncertain. Grandma, I don't understand. Why now? Eleanor turned to me, her expression softening. Because I've watched you suffer long enough, sweetheart. I'm dying. The world tilted. What? The word barely came out. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. I have maybe 6 months, probably less. She said it so calmly, but I could see the pain behind her composure. I found out 3 months ago, she continued. Since then, I've been getting my affairs in order, making sure my legacy goes to someone who deserves it. Tears blurred my vision. Eleanor was dying. The one person who had ever truly loved me was leaving. Oh, don't cry, Emily. She pulled me into her arms, and I breathed in her familiar perfume, lilac and vanilla. This isn't sad, she whispered. This is justice. Around us, the restaurant was completely silent. Even the kitchen noises had stopped. Everyone was watching this family implode in real time. You can't be serious about this, Linda tried again, desperation making her voice shrill. Mother, please think about your grandchildren. Think about the family legacy. I am thinking about it, Eleanor said firmly. That's exactly why I'm doing this. The family legacy should be compassion, hard work, and integrity. Emily embodies all of that. The rest of you represent greed, cruelty, and entitlement. Amanda's hands trembled. We'll sue. We'll prove you're not in your right mind. Good luck with that, Eleanor replied, a sharp smile on her lips. I have medical evaluations, psychological assessments, and testimony from dozens of witnesses about your treatment of Emily over the years. My lawyer has been documenting everything for months. She had planned it all, carefully, methodically, protecting me even as her own time ran short. I want to go home, I whispered. Of course, Eleanor said softly, wrapping her arm around me. James is outside with the car. He'll take us both to my place. We have a lot to discuss. As we turned to leave, Brian blocked our path. This isn't fair. She's not even one of us. Move, Eleanor said coldly. Or I'll have security remove you. He stepped aside, but the hatred in his eyes made me flinch. We walked through the restaurant in silence, every eye following us. The cool San Francisco air hit my face as we stepped outside, and I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. A sleek black car was waiting at the curb. James, Eleanor's driver for over 30 years, opened the door with a knowing smile. Miss Emily, welcome. James knows everything, Eleanor said as we slid into the back seat. He's been helping me plan this for weeks. The car pulled away from the restaurant, leaving my family, my former family, standing on the sidewalk in shock. Through the rear window, I saw Amanda screaming something, her face twisted with rage. Brian was already on his phone, probably calling a lawyer. My parents stood together, looking lost and broken. I should have felt something, guilt, maybe fear, but all I felt was numb exhaustion mixed with an odd sense of freedom. Are you really dying? I asked softly. Yes. She took my hand, her skin thin and fragile, yet her grip still strong. But I'm not afraid. I've lived a full life, Emily. I built an empire, raised a family, made my mark. Now I get to make sure everything I've built goes to someone worthy. I don't know if I can do this, I admitted. I don't know how to be rich. I don't know how to run your companies. You'll learn, she said confidently. You're smart, hardworking, and you have good instincts. You'll have an excellent team to guide you. I've made sure of that. The city lights blurred past the windows as we drove toward her estate in Pacific Heights. What happens now? I asked softly. Eleanor squeezed my hand. Now we prepare you for your new life, and we make absolutely sure that your family can never hurt you again. The next morning, I woke up in one of Eleanor's guest rooms, momentarily disoriented by the silk sheets and the view of San Francisco Bay through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Then the memories crashed back, the restaurant, the bill, the announcement, everything. My phone had been buzzing non-stop since I turned it back on. 43 missed calls from Amanda, 27 from my mother, 16 from Brian, and dozens of texts ranging from pleading to threats. I scrolled through them with a strange detachment. You're being selfish. Think about the family. Linda. I'll destroy you in court. You won't see a penny. Amanda. We need to talk. This can still be fixed. Robert. Grandma's clearly not thinking straight. Help us get her evaluated. Brian. I set the phone down and walked to the window. Eleanor's estate sprawled across 3 acres of prime San Francisco real estate. The morning sun glinted off the bay, sailboats already dotting the water. This was mine now, or would be soon. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Miss Emily, breakfast is ready, and Miss Eleanor would like to see you in the study. I found Eleanor sitting behind an enormous mahogany desk, looking surprisingly energetic despite yesterday's revelation about her health. James stood nearby, and a distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit sat across from her. Emily, this is Richard Collins, my attorney, Eleanor said. We need to review a few things. Richard stood, shaking my hand firmly. Miss Emily, it's a pleasure. Your grandmother has spoken very highly of you. I sat down, feeling like I was in a dream. Richard opened a leather portfolio and began explaining the details of the trust, the companies, the investments. The numbers seemed impossible as they swam before my eyes. $3 billion in liquid assets, $5 billion in properties and investments, including stakes in biotech companies, real estate developments, and tech startups. The immediate access accounts would activate today, Richard explained. $5 million for your personal use while the trust is being finalized. Your grandmother wanted to make sure you had resources right away. $5 million for immediate use. I felt dizzy. There's more, Eleanor said, her eyes sharp. Your family will try to contest this. They'll claim undue influence, diminished capacity, anything they can think of. We need to be prepared. What can they actually do? I asked. Legally, not much, Richard said, leaning forward. Miss Eleanor has documentation proving her sound mind, including evaluations from 3 separate doctors. The will is ironclad. However, they can make the process difficult, drag it out in court, create negative publicity. Let them try, Eleanor said firmly. I've been documenting their treatment of Emily for years, every cruel comment, every exclusion, every incident of financial abuse. If they want a court battle, I'll bury them with evidence. My phone buzzed again. Amanda. I silenced it. There's something else you need to know, Eleanor said, and something in her tone made me tense. Your adoption wasn't quite what you think it was. The room seemed to tilt. What do you mean? She pulled a folder from her desk drawer and slid it across to me. When Linda and Robert adopted you, they received a substantial sum of money, $750,000. It was meant to cover your care, education, everything you'd need growing up. I stared at the documents, bank statements, transfer records. They took money for adopting me? From a trust set up by your birth parents, Eleanor confirmed. They died in a car accident when you were 5. They had established a trust to ensure you were cared for. Linda and Robert were approved as adoptive parents and given access to those funds. My hands shook as I flipped through the papers. $750,000. And I had worn second-hand clothes, gone to junior college on student loans, been told the family couldn't afford to help me. They spent it all, I whispered, seeing the account statements, vacations, cars, Amanda's private school tuition, Brian's college fund. They spent my money on everyone but me. Yes, Eleanor said quietly. I only discovered this myself 2 years ago. I've been investigating since then, gathering evidence. That's theft, Emily. They stole from a child. The betrayal cut deeper than anything else. It wasn't just cruelty or favoritism. They had profited from my loss, taken money meant for my care, and used it to spoil their biological children while treating me like a burden. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. Because I needed to be sure, needed all the documentation perfect and legal. She paused, looking suddenly older. And because I knew that once you learned the truth, there would be no going back. Your relationship with them, toxic as it was, would be over completely. She was right. Any tiny part of me that had hoped for reconciliation, that had wondered if maybe I was too sensitive or ungrateful, died in that moment. They hadn't just been cruel. They had been criminals. What do I do? I felt lost, overwhelmed. You let me handle it, Eleanor said. Richard has already filed a civil suit against Linda and Robert for misappropriation of trust funds. With interest over 22 years, they owe you approximately $2.3 million. My phone exploded with calls again. This time it was my father. Answer it, Eleanor said. Put it on speaker. Let's hear what he has to say. With shaking hands, I accepted the call. Emily, Robert's voice was desperate. Emily, please, we need to talk. Your grandmother isn't thinking clearly. She seems perfectly clear to me, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. This is insane. You can't possibly think you deserve her entire fortune. You've been with us for 22 years, and suddenly you turn on us the moment money is involved. The moment money is involved? I repeated. You mean like the $750,000 you took for adopting me? The money you spent on everyone except me? Silence. I don't know what lies she's been telling you. Bank records don't lie, Dad. The word felt bitter. Richard has all the documentation. You stole from me. You both did. Linda's voice came through the phone, shrill with panic. That money was for raising you, for housing you, feeding you. You gave me hand-me-downs and made me pay my own way through college, I said. Meanwhile, Amanda got designer clothes and a full ride to a private university. Brian got a new car at 16. I got nothing. You're being ungrateful, Robert tried. We gave you a home. You gave me a prison, I said. The words felt powerful, liberating. You made me feel worthless every single day, and you did it while spending money that was meant for me. We'll fight this, Linda threatened. We'll take you to court. Please do, Eleanor cut in. I'd love to see you explain the financial records to a judge. Explain how you took money meant for a grieving 5-year-old and spent it on luxury vacations. The call ended abruptly. They had hung up, probably to call their own lawyer. I felt Richard's hand on my shoulder. Miss Emily, I know this is overwhelming, but you need to understand, you hold all the cards here. They'll try anyway, I said. Of course they will, Eleanor agreed. But they'll lose. And when they do, you'll never have to see them again. 3 days later, the story hit the media. Somehow, and I suspected Amanda was behind it, the details of news of the change to Eleanor's will had leaked to the press. Billionaire disinherits family for adopted granddaughter, screamed the headlines. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with reporters wanting statements. I had moved into Eleanor's estate temporarily, unable to face my apartment, the address my family knew all too well. James had brought over my things, and I now lived in a strange bubble of luxury and chaos. The public reaction was divided. Some praised Eleanor for rewarding character over blood. Others called me a manipulative gold digger who had seduced an elderly woman for her fortune. The comments online were brutal. She must have been sleeping with the old woman's lawyer or something. Gold digger alert. This girl knew exactly what she was doing. Good for Eleanor. Family isn't blood, it's how you treat people. That adopted girl will blow through billions in a year. Just wait. I tried to ignore it, but the words burrowed under my skin. Was I wrong to accept this? I wondered aloud. Should I have refused her gift? Stop reading those, Eleanor said, finding me hunched over my laptop in the library. She looked more frail than she had a few days ago, the cancer clearly advancing. People will always have opinions. Let them talk. They're calling me terrible things, I murmured. They called me terrible things when I built my first company, she said, settling into the chair beside me. Said I was too aggressive, too masculine, too ambitious. That a woman couldn't possibly succeed in biotech. I proved them wrong. She took my hand, her grip weaker now. You'll prove them wrong, too, Emily. Not by defending yourself, but by being who you are. Kind, hardworking, principled. That afternoon, Richard arrived with news. Linda and Robert had officially filed to contest the will, he said. They're claiming diminished capacity and undue influence. Let me see, Eleanor said. Richard handed her the legal documents. I read over her shoulder, my anger rising with every word. They're saying I isolated you from the family, that I manipulated a sick, elderly woman, that I took advantage of your declining health. This is ridiculous, I said. I didn't even know about the cancer until that night. We have evidence proving otherwise, Richard assured me. Testimony from doctors, friends, business associates. They're grasping at straws. But something in his expression made me uneasy. What aren't you telling me? I asked. He exchanged a glance with Eleanor. Amanda has hired a private investigator. They're digging into your past, looking for anything they can twist against you. My stomach dropped. There's nothing to find. We know that, Eleanor said. But they'll try to invent something, twist innocent moments, take things out of context. As if on cue, my phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Emily, it's so good to finally reach you. The voice was syrupy sweet, unfamiliar. I'm Melissa Grant from the Bay City Chronicle. I'd love to chat about your relationship with Miss Hayes. No comment, I said, moving to hang up. Wait, just a few questions about the allegations. What allegations? About your business. There are questions about where your startup capital came from. Some people suggest Eleanor funded it years ago, that you've been planning this takeover for a long time. My blood ran cold. That's not true. I built my business with my own money. Can you prove that? Do you have documentation? I hung up, my hands shaking. They're trying to create a narrative, Richard said grimly. That you groomed Eleanor for years. That everything you achieved was really her money. But it wasn't, I said. I have loan documents, business records. We know, Eleanor said softly, resting her hand on mine. And we'll prove it. But Emily, you need to be ready. This is going to get worse before it gets better. She was right. By evening, social media was flooded with theories. Anonymous accounts, probably my family, spread lies, that I had failed out of junior college, I'd graduated with honors, that my business was failing, it was thriving, that I'd had multiple affairs with older men I'd barely dated in years. The cruelest rumor was that I had somehow caused my birth parents' deaths to get access to their trust fund. I had been 5 years old when they died, but facts didn't matter to internet vultures. I shut my laptop, feeling sick. "Miss Emily," James said, appearing at the library door. Reporters at the gate. Quite a few of them. I walked to the window overlooking the front of the estate. News vans lined the street, cameras pointed toward the house. My private life had become a public spectacle. "This is what they want," I said quietly. "They want me to crack, to do something that makes me look bad." "Then don't give them the satisfaction," Eleanor said. She looked exhausted, but her eyes still burned with strength. "We fight this the right way, with truth, with evidence, with dignity." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying moments from my childhood, Linda telling me I was lucky they'd taken me in, Amanda laughing when I wasn't invited to her birthday party, Brian pushing me into the pool at a family gathering while everyone laughed. Every slight, every cruel remark, all building to this moment. Around 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You're going to regret this. We'll destroy you. Amanda." I took a screenshot and sent it to Richard. Evidence. Eleanor had taught me well. The next morning brought another problem. Brian had somehow talked his way past security and was arguing with James in the foyer. "I need to see Emily," he said desperately. "Please, it's important." "It's okay, James," I said, though my heart was racing. "I'll talk to him." Brian looked awful, unshaven, wrinkled clothes, dark circles under his eyes. Nothing like the polished banker I'd grown up with. "Emily, please," he said. "We need to fix this. The family's falling apart." "The family fell apart a long time ago," I said. "You're just noticing now because money's involved." "That's not fair," he protested. "I know we weren't always. I know we could have treated you better, but cutting us out completely? That's too far. Too far." My voice rose despite my effort to stay calm. "Brian, you pushed me into a pool when I was 12, and I nearly drowned because no one bothered to teach me how to swim. Amanda told everyone at school I was adopted because my real parents didn't want me. Mom forgot my birthday 3 years in a row. Dad told me I should be grateful for scraps. And all of you spent $750,000 that was meant for me while I worked 3 jobs to pay for junior college." Brian's face went pale. "I didn't know about that money." "I swear." "You didn't know because you never asked," I said. "None of you ever asked how I was doing, if I was okay, if I needed help. You want to fix the family? There's nothing to fix. It was broken from the start. Emily, please. Get out." My voice was steady now, cold. "Get out of this house and don't come back." "You're making a mistake," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "When Grandma's gone, you'll have no one." "I already had no one," I replied. "At least now I'll have the means to build an actual life." James escorted Brian out. Through the window, I watched my brother walk to his car, shoulders slumped. For a brief moment, I felt a pang, not guilt, exactly, but a quiet sadness for what might have been if they'd chosen differently. That afternoon, Richard called an emergency meeting. His expression was grave. "Amanda's legal team has found something, or claims they have," he said. "They're alleging you forged business documents, specifically client contracts. They're trying to paint you as dishonest, someone capable of manipulating Eleanor." "That's insane," I said. "All my contracts are legitimate." "We know," Richard said. "But they're filing a motion to delay the probate proceedings pending investigation. It's a stalling tactic, but it could work." Eleanor's hand slammed down on the desk, startling both of us. Despite her frailty, anger gave Eleanor strength. "Absolutely not," she said sharply. "Richard, file an emergency motion to expedite." "I want this settled before," she didn't finish the sentence. "Before she died." "Eleanor, you should rest, Richard began. I'll rest when this is done, she snapped. My granddaughter is being attacked by vultures masquerading as family. We end this now. Richard nodded, pulling out his phone and stepping aside to make calls. Eleanor turned to me, her eyes fierce despite the exhaustion on her face. Emily, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I'm holding a press conference tomorrow. I'm going to tell the truth, all of it. About the stolen money, the abuse, everything. But I need you to be there with me. The world needs to see you, to hear from you directly. Terror gripped me. I can't. I'll say something wrong, You'll be perfect, she said firmly. Because you'll tell the truth. That's all you need to do. That night, I barely slept. I kept rehearsing what I might say, then giving up. How do you summarize 22 years of pain in a few minutes? How do you make strangers understand? The press conference was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon at Eleanor's Union Square office. When James drove us there, the media presence was overwhelming, cameras everywhere, reporters shouting questions, crowds filming on their phones. Richard had prepared a statement, but when I looked at Eleanor, really looked at her, I saw how much it was costing her. She was dying, using the last of her strength to fight for me. The conference room was packed, cameras rolling, lights glaring, the air thick with anticipation. Eleanor sat beside me at a long table, Richard on her other side. She looked small but unbreakable. Thank you for coming, she began, her voice surprisingly strong. I'm here to address the rumors and allegations surrounding my will and my granddaughter, Emily Parker. She laid everything out, documentation of the abuse, the stolen trust fund money, years of emotional and financial manipulation. She presented bank records, medical evaluations confirming her sound mind, and testimony from witnesses. It was methodical, devastating, irrefutable. Some have suggested that Emily manipulated me, Eleanor continued, her gaze sweeping the room. The truth is the opposite. My biological family manipulated her. They took a grieving 5-year-old and used her as a punching bag for their own failures. They stole from her, belittled her, and made her feel worthless. Despite all of that, Emily built a life, a successful business. She became kind, compassionate, hardworking, everything they are not. Then she turned to me. Emily would like to say a few words. My mouth went dry. Every eye in the room was on me. I could feel the judgment, the curiosity, the skepticism. I cleared my throat. I don't know what to say that my grandmother hasn't already said. I never wanted this attention. I never wanted to be rich or famous or caught in legal battles. My voice steadied as I continued. I just wanted a family that loved me. I wanted parents who cared if I was okay, siblings who celebrated my successes instead of mocking them. I wanted to belong somewhere. I looked directly into the cameras. I know some of you think I'm a gold digger, that I manipulated a dying woman for money. But I didn't even know about the inheritance until that night at the restaurant. I didn't know she was sick. I didn't know about the stolen trust fund money. All I knew was that once again, my family was humiliating me and making me pay for it. Tears stung my eyes, but I pushed through. My grandmother is giving me her fortune because she believes in who I am, not because I asked for it. And I'm going to honor that trust by being who she knows me to be. Someone who builds things, who helps people, and who refuses to be cruel just because it's easier. The questions came immediately, reporters shouting, cameras flashing, but Richard handled them calmly, answering everything. Eleanor sat beside me and found my hand under the table. Just as we were wrapping up, Amanda burst through the doors. Security moved to stop her, but she was already screaming. This is all lies. She's brainwashed you all. Amanda's makeup was smeared, her designer dress wrinkled. She looked unhinged. I'm the real victim here. That adopted brat stole my inheritance. The cameras turned, capturing every second of her breakdown. Miss Amanda, a reporter shouted, what about the allegations that your parents stole trust fund money meant for Emily? That money was ours, she shouted. We earned it by raising her ungrateful ass. You earned $750,000 for treating a child like garbage, another reporter asked. Amanda realized her mistake too late. The cameras caught everything, her rage, her admission, her complete lack of remorse. Get her out of here, Richard told security. As Amanda was dragged out, still screaming, I watched the reporters typing furiously. The story had just flipped. Amanda had handed them the villain they needed, and it wasn't me. Eleanor squeezed my hand. Well, she said quietly, I don't think we could have planned that better if we tried. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Amanda had destroyed herself, and she'd done it on camera for the world to see. The video of Amanda's meltdown went viral within hours. By evening, it had over 10 million views. News outlets replayed it on loop, dissecting every word, every wild expression. Social media exploded with commentary. Did she really just admit they took money for raising an adopted kid? This family is toxic. Emily deserves everything. Amanda just destroyed her own case in under 60 seconds. Brilliant. The look on her face when she realized what she said, priceless. Public opinion shifted overnight. What had once been a divided conversation became a wave of support for me and condemnation for my family. Memes spread. Commentators analyzed the footage. Legal experts agreed that Amanda's confession had completely torpedoed their case. I watched it all from Eleanor's study, still processing it. Richard sat across from me, looking satisfied. Their legal case just collapsed, he said. Amanda's admission that they earned the trust fund money by raising you constitutes an admission of misappropriation. Combined with our documentation, they have no ground to stand on. What happens now? I asked. Now their lawyers will scramble for damage control, he said, but it's too late. The court hearing is in 3 days. I'd be shocked if the judge doesn't rule in our favor immediately. He paused. There's also a criminal aspect. The district attorney's office has reached out. They're considering filing fraud charges against Linda and Robert. Criminal charges? I whispered. My parents could go to prison. Eleanor entered the study, moving slowly, James supporting her arm. She had declined rapidly since the press conference. The effort had drained her, but her eyes were still sharp. Don't look so worried, she said as she settled into her chair. They made their choices. Now they'll face the consequences. They're still my parents, I said quietly. Or they were supposed to be. They were never your parents, Eleanor said firmly. Parents protect their children. They love and support them. What Linda and Robert did was exploitation, pure and simple. My phone buzzed again. Another message, this one made my blood run cold. I know where you live now. This isn't over. I showed it to Richard, who immediately made a call. I'm filing for a restraining order today and increasing security at the estate. She's desperate, Eleanor said softly. And desperate people do dangerous things. She was right. Over the next 2 days, Amanda's behavior became increasingly erratic. She showed up at my old apartment building, screaming at tenants. She posted long, rambling rants on social media, each one more unhinged than the last. She claimed I had used witchcraft to manipulate Eleanor, that I was part of some conspiracy, that she was the real victim of elder abuse. Each post only made things worse for her. The public watched her self-destruct in real time, and whatever sympathy she had left vanished completely. Brian tried a different approach. He went on a local news program, positioning himself as the reasonable middle ground. Look, I think there were mistakes made on both sides, he said earnestly to the camera. Yes, maybe we weren't as welcoming to Emily as we should have been, but cutting the entire family out over childhood disagreements seems extreme. The interviewer wasn't buying it. Mr. Bryan, are you aware that your parents received $750,000 meant for Emily's care, which they allegedly spent on your education and your sister's? Bryan's composure cracked. That money was for the whole family. Emily benefited from it too. She wore hand-me-downs while your sister got designer clothes, the interviewer pressed. She took out loans for junior college while you attended a private university fully funded. How exactly did she benefit? Bryan ended the interview early, but the damage was done. The public saw right through him. My father tried a different tactic, appealing to sympathy. He gave a tearful interview, saying he had loved me like a daughter, that this was breaking his heart, that families should forgive one another. We made mistakes, Robert said, his voice trembling. What parent hasn't? But to be cut off completely, to be accused of theft, it's destroying us. Linda can barely get out of bed. Bryan's marriage is suffering. Amanda is having a breakdown. All because we weren't perfect. The interviewer, the same one who dismantled Bryan, showed no mercy. Mr. Robert, you describe what you did as imperfection. Yet investigators have documented years of emotional abuse, financial exploitation, and systematic exclusion of Emily from family activities. That goes far beyond imperfection. That's not abuse, Robert protested. That's just family dynamics. Every family has problems. Every family doesn't steal $750,000 from a child, the interviewer replied. My father walked off the set. But my mother's approach was the most calculated. Linda hired a PR firm and gave a carefully staged interview to a sympathetic journalist. She wore a simple dress, minimal makeup, and sat in soft lighting. She cried at all the right moments. I loved Emily from the moment we brought her home, Linda said, dabbing her eyes. She was this beautiful, broken little girl who'd lost everything. I wanted to give her a family, a home, love. Yes, we were stricter with her than with our biological children, maybe that was wrong, but we were trying to prepare her for a hard world. We knew she'd face challenges as an adopted child, and we wanted her to be strong. The journalist ate it up. And the money, Linda continued, that money was meant for her care, and that's what we used it for, housing, food, utilities. Raising a child is expensive. Maybe we should have documented every expense, but we were a family, not a business. Then she looked directly into the camera. Emily, if you're watching, please know I love you. I always have. Can we please just talk, without lawyers, without the media, just mother and daughter? I watched the interview with Eleanor and Richard. When it ended, I felt sick. She's good, Richard admitted. This is the most sympathetic they've looked since all this started. She's a liar, I said flatly. I know, Eleanor replied. But some people will believe her. The question is, do you care? Did I? A week ago, I might have cared desperately. I would have wanted everyone to know the truth, to see Linda for what she really was. But now? No, I said. I don't care what strangers think. The people who mattered knew the truth. Eleanor smiled. Good girl. The court hearing arrived on a gray San Francisco morning. The courthouse was surrounded by media, protesters holding signs both for and against me, and curious onlookers hoping to catch a glimpse of the drama. Richard had arranged for us to enter through a private entrance, but I could still hear the noise outside. Eleanor looked frail in her wheelchair. We had finally convinced her to use one, but her spine was still perfectly straight. I held her hand as we entered the courtroom. My family was already there. Linda, Robert, Bryan, and Amanda sat at the counsel table with their legal team. Linda had maintained the soft, sympathetic image from her interview. Robert looked tired and defeated. Brian avoided my eyes. But Amanda glared at me with pure hatred. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Anderson, entered, and everyone rose. "This is a hearing regarding the will of Eleanor Hayes and the contest filed by Linda Parker and family," Judge Anderson began. "I've reviewed the documentation submitted by both parties. Counsel, your opening statements." The family's lawyer went first, a slick man named Robert Hughes, who argued that Eleanor had been unduly influenced, that her illness had impaired her judgment, and that the will should be set aside in favor of the prior will. Then Richard stood. He didn't argue. He simply presented facts: bank records showing the stolen trust fund money, medical evaluations from 3 doctors confirming Eleanor's sound mind, testimony from business associates about her mental clarity, documentation of the abuse I'd suffered, photos, recordings, witness statements. And finally, Amanda's viral video confession. "Your Honor," Richard said as he concluded, "this is not a case of undue influence. This is a case of a woman choosing to leave her estate to someone who deserves it, and a family furious that their victim has finally escaped their control." Linda's lawyer tried to respond, but Judge Anderson cut him off. "I've seen enough," she said. "The evidence is overwhelming. Miss Eleanor Hayes was clearly of sound mind when she executed her new will. The documentation of abuse is extensive and credible, and the admission by Amanda Parker that the family earned money meant for Emily's care confirms the allegations of financial exploitation." My heart raced. Furthermore, Judge Anderson continued, "The behavior displayed by the contesting parties during these proceedings, including threats, harassment, and public defamation, only reinforces that Miss Hayes's decision was correct. A family that truly loved Emily would never have treated her this way before or after the will change." Amanda stood up, unable to contain herself. "You can't." "Sit down," Judge Anderson ordered. "Or I'll hold you in contempt." Amanda sat down, her fury still burning. "I'm ruling in favor of the will as executed," Judge Anderson declared. "The petition to contest the will is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm ordering Linda and Robert Parker to repay the misappropriated trust funds with interest, $750,000 plus interest over 22 years, for a total of approximately $2.3 million. They have 90 days to pay in full." The courtroom erupted. Linda collapsed in her chair, sobbing. Robert looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Brian buried his face in his hands. Amanda screamed obscenities until bailiffs escorted her out. I sat frozen, unable to process that it was finally over. We had won, completely, decisively, irrevocably. Eleanor squeezed my hand. "It's done, sweetheart. You're free." As we left the courthouse, the media swarmed around us, shouting questions. How did I feel? What would I do with the money? Did I have a message for my family? But I didn't answer. I helped Eleanor into the car, and James drove us away from the courthouse. Back at the estate, she was exhausted but satisfied. "I can die happy now," she said softly, and the words hit me like a punch to the chest. "Don't say that," I whispered. "Please." "Oh, Emily." She cupped my face gently in her thin hands. "I'm not afraid. I got to see justice done. I got to know my fortune will be used for good. That's more than most people get." Over the next 3 weeks, I watched Eleanor fade. She slipped in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid, sometimes lost in her memories. I stayed by her side, holding her hand, telling her about my plans for the foundation. "I want to start something to help adopted children who are being abused or exploited," I told her. "That's perfect," she murmured one afternoon when she was clear. "Help others like you, break the cycle." "I will," I promised. "I'll make you proud." "You already have." Her smile was peaceful. "You survived them, Emily. You stayed kind when they were cruel. You worked hard when they tried to break you. You're everything I hoped you'd be. She died on a Tuesday morning, with me holding her hand as sunlight streamed through the window. Her last words were, "Thank you for being my real family." I stayed with her for a long time after, crying for the woman who had saved me, loved me, and given me a future, the only grandmother I'd ever truly had. The funeral was private, just me, James, Richard, and a few of Eleanor's close friends. My family wasn't invited, though Linda tried to crash it and was turned away by security. In the weeks that followed, the full transfer of assets was completed. I was now the sole heir to a $3 billion fortune. The number still felt impossible, but I was determined to honor Eleanor's legacy. The first thing I did was establish the Eleanor Hayes Foundation for Foster Children, not because it looked good or made me seem charitable, but because I knew firsthand how many kids were trapped in situations like mine. The foundation would provide legal support, counseling, emergency housing, and scholarships for foster and adopted children suffering abuse or neglect. The second thing I did was hire an excellent management team to run Eleanor's companies. I wasn't ready to run billion-dollar corporations myself, but I could learn alongside them. I attended every meeting, asked questions, studied at night. Slowly, I began to understand the empire she had built. My family's downfall was swift and brutal. Unable to repay the $2.3 million they owed, Linda and Robert were forced to sell their house, their cars, everything of value. They moved into a small apartment in a rough neighborhood. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had always looked down on the people they now lived among. Robert was charged with fraud and misappropriation of trust funds and sentenced to 3 years in prison. Linda received 2 years. Brian, who had benefited from the stolen money through his education, was ordered to repay his portion, about $400,000. His marriage collapsed under the financial strain, and last I heard, he was working 2 jobs to make the payments. But Amanda's fate was the most satisfying. Her viral meltdown had destroyed her credibility. Her husband divorced her, taking the house and most of their assets. She had invested heavily in a restaurant venture that failed spectacularly, leaving her deeply in debt. The private investigator she'd hired to dig up dirt on me sued her over unpaid fees. She tried to write a tell-all book, but publishers rejected it after fact-checkers found it full of lies. She even started a YouTube channel, but the comments were so brutal she deleted it. Eventually, she tried to reconcile, not out of remorse, but out of desperation. Her email began. "Emily, I know we've had our differences, but we're still sisters. Family forgives family. I'm struggling right now, and I know you're doing well. Maybe we could meet for coffee and rebuild what we lost." I deleted it without replying. 6 months after Eleanor's death, I stood in the foundation's new headquarters, a beautiful building in downtown San Francisco dedicated to helping children like me. The walls were covered with photos of kids we had already helped, stories of escape and new beginnings. James stood beside me, now the foundation's operations director. "Miss Eleanor would be proud," he said. "I hope so," I replied. My phone buzzed, another message from my family. They never stopped trying. This one was from Brian. "Emily, Mom and Dad are struggling. Dad's in prison. Mom's barely surviving. I know you're angry, but they're still your parents. Can't you find it in your heart to help?" I typed my response carefully. They were never my parents. They were people who took money to raise me and used me as a punching bag for their failures. I owe them nothing. But I'll make you a deal. I'll donate the exact amount they stole, $750,000, to a fund helping foster children escape abusive homes, in their names. That's the only legacy they'll have. I hit send and blocked his number. A year later, I was featured in a business magazine, not as the adopted girl who inherited billions, but as the principal owner and chair working with a professional management team, and as the founder of a foundation that had already helped over 500 children. The article focused on my work, my vision, my accomplishments. There was a small mention of my family scandal, but it was in the past. The story had changed. I wasn't the victim anymore. I wasn't the gold digger or the manipulator. I was simply Emily, a woman who had survived, thrived, and chosen to help others do the same. Through mutual acquaintances, I later heard that Amanda was working in telemarketing, barely making ends meet. Linda, recently released from prison, was living in a women's shelter. Robert was still incarcerated, his health failing. Brian was bankrupt, his expensive education now worthless without the privilege that once propped him up. Part of me, the part that remembered being a lonely little girl, felt a flicker of something. Not satisfaction. Not pity. Just acknowledgement that actions have consequences, and cruelty always comes back around. My family never recovered. Amanda's attempts to rebuild her life failed again and again. Linda and Robert lived out their remaining years in poverty and isolation. Brian's pride kept him from accepting jobs he considered beneath him, leaving him trapped in endless struggle. They had built their lives on cruelty and entitlement. When that foundation crumbled, they had nothing left to stand on. As for me, I built something lasting from the ashes of that pain. Every child that the foundation saved, every life that we changed, every cycle of abuse that we broke, that was my true inheritance from Eleanor Hayes. Not the money, but the understanding that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming everything they said you couldn't be, and watching them destroy themselves while you're busy building something beautiful. That was justice, pure and simple. If you enjoyed my story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next story.